this was meant to premiere yesterday, but for edit it took me far longer than I was expecting, including the export, so naturally I decided to delay it by a day so that then I can give more of you a chance to actually attend said premiere, because otherwise if I premiere at midnight, few people are going to have the opportunity to do so. But regardless, this additional time I've granted myself to edit the video has also allowed me to create a brand new channel icon exclusively for the month of Skytubers, and that channel icon is going to be used in the bottom right hand side of the screen from now on as the watermark of every single video within this month of Skytubers, mind you. So all 50 Skytubers uploads will be utilising this watermark, so I sure hope you guys enjoy what I have created when it comes down to that watermark, as you see right beside me, mind you. But enough of the lollygag, and we're going to head straight into this introduction so that then we can get to the real juice of this video, which is debuting Skytubers itself in a awesome premiere style, talking, or ranting I should even say, positively about why I love Skylanders so much and why the 50 videos this month is justified, so to say. Rants on the internet are notorious for expressing negative feelings towards someone who's done wrong, or, you know, a huge corporate company who are, of course, manipulating audiences in order to garner their own self-interest. In most cases that is, of course, money, because that can lead to power and influence over the masses.
Alright guys, we need a quick money-making tactic that will make the community want to buy more of our stuff and make Skylanders a successful game. Well, what if we listened to the community and made creation crystals resettable so they could have an infinite number of combinations? Or what if we put PvP back into the game, or battle mode, or any of these options that they wanted, or we actually make a use for the old gimmick characters, or anything like that? Oh, thanks for the feedback. That sounds like so much work. Let's disregard everything the community says entirely.
And so naturally, to us humans, it comes easy to rant about things that we hate, things that we despise so much that we would eradicate them from the entirety of the universe if we had the capabilities to do so. And that's purely because as human beings, we thrive off of negativity. We purposefully seek the bad in things so that then that way we can have a better reflection on ourselves. If we see something bad in someone else and we don't see it in ourselves, then in a way we are, of course, complimenting ourselves and making us feel bad, feel better even about our own mistakes and wrongdoings in our own lives. But needless to say, we all do wrong in life, and the negativity is even amongst all of us, even if it doesn't seem like that at first. But with all of that being said, whilst ranting is notorious for taking a negative path, just like all things in life, there is balance when it comes to rants. You can be just as positive in a rant as you can be negative, and that is what I made the Why I Love Series for, so I could just blabber on and express my passion towards certain topics and just tell you guys, without a script, my natural feelings towards the things I love in life, the things that I could not live without. And of course, that balance between the negative aspects and the positive aspects of rants, because at the end of the day, when you rant, you're looking for a change, and that can create positive change. Companies that listen to you can take what you criticize about them, and they can change, they can adapt, and they can make themselves better if they're willing to listen, and that's what we should all do in order to better improve ourselves. But that balance in life is essential, because without balance, life as we know it will not be sustainable. The sun in and of itself, the thing that gives us not only light but heat and warmth, without the sun we wouldn't be able to survive, because we'd freeze to death. We'd face, you know, temperatures of negative degrees in the 4-digit range. And so the sun requires this balance to remain almost infinitely lit because there's a balance between for combustion of one element and for attraction of another, and this constant force and acting against each other is what allows for chemical reaction within the sun to be enacted for this year and for next few millions following it. Just look at the dinosaurs' extinction. It had nothing to do with a meteorite that hit the Earth. Sure, that would have killed off a few thousand ground dinosaurs, but it wouldn't have done anything to dinosaurs that were miles out, yet it still caused planetary extinction, and that's because the meteorite brought up so much ash from the surrounding volcanoes that it blocked out the sun for years, making all of the dinosaurs that weren't impacted by the direct hit of a meteorite freeze to death. That's how they went extinct. It had nothing to do with the meteorite or the lack of balance in the sun. It just had to do with the fact that without the sun and its quintessential balance it introduces to us as living beings, was taken away from them. It was stripped away. And I can see the same thing happening to humans, not for another few millions of years yet, luckily enough. But that's what makes our time on the planet now so important, because life does not last forever. There is finite to life. It does not go on. No matter what, we all as human beings die, and our time has a limit to it, and that's what makes our time on this planet all the more special. It's why we should spend that time doing what we love, expressing what we love, and that's exactly what I aim to do today about my positive rant to start off Skytember with, because here's the thing, I am doing a series where every single day of September I'm going to be uploading a Skylanders video to make a total of 50 Skylanders videos over the course of the 30 days of September, and I'm calling it Skytember because it's a pun I came up with my head and I decided to roll with it. So what better way to start off Skytember than a rant that's purely positive about Skylanders? I will not say a single negative thing about this franchise because it has had such a positive influence over me for my entire life, and I cannot wait to blabber on about my love for it. And my love starts with the fact that the games are fun. That is the single most important thing when developing a game. Is it fun to play? Does the gameplay work? Because at the end of the day, you can make a game that has an amazing story, amazing music, amazing graphics. You can just nail it out of the park. Or hit it out of the park, I should say, because that's the correct expression. But as I digress, everyone's favourite phrase, you can absolutely hit it out of the park. But if you know, flub the quintessential element of the game, the gameplay, then the game has kind of aged up, man. Like, you can make flaws with a story, you can make continuity issues, that's not going to matter if the game is fun to play. And at the end of the day, I'm saying this as if those elements of Skylanders are bad, because, truth be told, there isn't a bad Skylanders game amongst the crowd. Even Skylanders Imaginators, which I notoriously call the worst Skylanders games by miles, still has its geniusness behind it. Sure, its story is terrible, and its NPCs aren't very engaging in the slightest, and the story itself just doesn't immerse you, and neither does its characters.
I will not say a single negative thing about this franchise.
But it still has really fleshed out and fluent gameplay with characters that have just amazing controls, incredible upgrade chambers that allow the moves to really chain together in a natural, flowing way to create some great movement, which is slow paced, unfortunately, because all of the senseis, you know, move at a snail's pace. But still, we're going to talk about Imaginators later, because despite being the worst game, there is some genius behind it, and it's fun! Like all of the other 5 Skylanders games, it's fun. I could play these games for years on end and still have an absolute blast while doing it, because going around, solving puzzles, you know, completing little locksmiths and pushing beams into place in order to, of course, complete a puzzle, or, as I said earlier, going through into different combat scenarios and beating the absolute living crap out of enemies is fun to me. I love the action genre. It's my favourite genre of video games because it allows me to truly test my coordination, which is terrible due to a condition I have. It's like dyslexia, but instead of words, it's my coordination that just kind of flubs everywhere, so naturally I can't throw and catch a ball. However, video games, action games more specifically, allow me to improve my hand and eye coordination because I need to react to the games quickly. I need to press the correct buttons as fast as possible, and action games test that, as do Skylanders, because Skylanders might seem simple at first. You know, you just mash buttons in order to defeat enemies, and you strip it down into its simple basis, and that's exactly what it is. But once you take a further look at the gameplay, you notice that there's a lot more depth to be had. You have the upgrade chambers, you have the collectibles, which are so much fun to go out of your way to find. It encourages exploration, which just is what contributes to making level design so much fun, because every level is creative with its own gimmicks to take advantage of the mechanics of the game, and generally just make the game feel fresh and fast-paced as you're moving through it, as the next level doesn't feel anything like the one before it, so you never feel like you're going through the same level twice. You never feel bored. The pace is constantly moving forward, unless there's Imaginators. But hey, nothing negative. So moving on. That's why I love Skylanders. The games are fun, and that's what's so important about games. And the fact that Skylanders nails that quintessential element of games. What makes games worth playing is what makes Skylanders amazing. In fact, I don't think amazing is a strong enough of a word to truly express how much I love these games and how much fun I have going through them, with the constant variety that they spark up and the creative, ingenious level design. There are only like, what, 6 or 7 out of the 100+ levels in the games that I dislike and, you know, hate playing. But the main quintessential thing that makes the game so fun is, of course, the creativity. I alluded to this in the game design, and when it comes to the game's music, it is no different. So there's a member of the community known as Judas, whatever, you know, his last few letters are. I'll link it in the description. The point is, he highlights how awesome the music are in these games. He brings emphasis on that. He has passion, and I love sharing that passion with him, because thanks to him, it's given me a greater understanding of just how good this music is. Because first of all, it's original, especially if you're looking at the Spyro's Adventure soundtrack or the Supercharger soundtrack, my two favourite from the franchise. But it's one thing to have original music, and another thing to have music that fits the themes and setting of the game, and that's exactly what the music in this franchise nails. Every piece of music is carefully thought out to make sure that it feels as though it fits within the universe. It has that feeling to it that elevates your emotions and feels like it belongs. It never drags out, and it just adds to your immersion in this huge world that's being built up, because at the end of the day, Skylanders is a multi-medium franchise. It has expanded beyond the games. It has books, comics, TV shows, and sure, whilst these don't serve under the same canon, they all present the same world, a wide, expansive, endless sea of islands in the sky. So says the sky in Skylanders, and that is a world which I am constantly immersed in. I'm invested as I jump from island to island, learning how unique they are, despite the fact that the Skylands is said to be infinite. The idea of a world right above our, you know, faces, so up high in the sky that we can never see it, and yet it exists for infinity, is something that I find myself constantly impressed by, and something that you can't really envision, and yet you love to try and do it anyway. It's a world which was built up from scratch, and yet it invests you at a level that no other video game achieves, due to the fact that it's so well thought out, it's so detailed, and it just has such an amazing scale to it. You can be prepared to hear the word amazing a lot. But as we digress, outside of the music, the originality lies within the characters, because if you look at a character like Typool over here, she's an amalgamation of several different sea creatures. You know, you have barnacles, you have seaweed all over her, and so naturally that is an incredibly creative design right there. Year in, year out, when Skylanders games were being introduced, the games had new levels and new characters, no questions asked, and the fact that they were able to develop so many unique, distinguishable, creative characters that were original to these games, you couldn't see them anywhere else, is just a task which I can't conceive of being accomplished. And yet the development team managed it year in, year out. It's an accomplishment in and of itself to come up with 2 or 3 creative characters, let alone 167 of them over the course of 6 games. And better yet, the developers might be creative, and when it comes to their games, you know, the creativity is what keeps it fresh. But the games in and of themselves don't just influence creativity, they downright promote it. Especially Skylanders Imaginators. I promise you guys we can do back to this, and that's exactly what we're here to do, because when it comes to Imaginators, you have these creation crystals which when you place on a portal you can create your own Skylander out of hundreds of parts. Like, seriously, the customization is insane. It creates for combinations within the 29-digit range as an approximation. The point is, it's near enough infinite with the huge amounts of customization available, and that's not even taking into account all of the different colours you can choose. Like, sure, you can use the exact same gear, heads and everything, but your Imaginator is still ultimately going to be yours from the colours you choose, how they're going to be unique to you, because an Imaginator is an expression of your personality. All your beliefs, values, experiences, they are what shape your imagination, and it's and Imaginators harvests that. It allows you to pour all of that into a single creation, which is so good of them, because at the end of the day, Skylanders could have kept on going on doing its own creative thing, but the developers wanted to give the fans of the franchise the chance to showcase their own creativity. And that's so amazing, the fact that you can create an Imaginator completely unique to you based on what makes you, you. And that's also what forms the basis of opinions, your experiences, beliefs, values, and all of that fun stuff. It's what makes one person's opinion different to another, and that's something we should cherish rather than shame. I've said this time and time again, an opinion is subjective for a reason. It's based on a completely unique set of traits to another person. Because these traits differentiate so much between the 7 billion of us, that's what makes all of our opinions different and something worth treasuring. The fact that there's 7.5 billion humans on this planet, and yet you're the only one amongst them. You are that unique. You are literally 1 to 7.5 billion, and that is worth treasuring. And Skylanders just brings that to light. It emphasizes that, at least to me. That's what I get out of it, and that's what's important, what you get out of it. And I'm sure a lot of you watching this video right now who also love Skylanders think the exact same thing, or maybe you're just into a franchise because, oh, it's really fun, which I have no problems with that, because at the end of the day, that's your connection to the franchise, and it doesn't need to be the same as mine. That's what's so beautiful about it. But man, this is getting really light-hearted, so we're going to move on to the physicality of Skylanders, and the fact that, you know, this might look like a toy, but it's got no moving parts. You know, you can't take them apart, put them back together again, because that's what you do with toys. No, these are statues. It's called Toys to Life because you take the statue and put it on a portal. The only reason why it's called a Toys to Life, not Statues to Life, is because it's a far more marketable name. Like, seriously, why would a kid buy statues to life when instead they can bring their toys to life? And toys in of themselves promote creativity, going back to what I was saying earlier, since the developers of Skylanders Spark's Adventure saw video games, which were somebody else's imagination, and then they saw their kids playing with toys, which were their own imagination. So they thought, what if we combine them to make Skylanders? And I think it's seriously worked out. But as I digress, when it comes to these statues and placing them on the portal, that's a bonus. Having the character, you know, having this character in a video game when I place them on the portal, is a bonus, a cherry on top of the cake, if you say, because these are incredibly detailed. They are completely original characters, as I was talking about before. You will not find statues of these characters with this amount of detail, with this design, this execution anywhere else, and that's what makes these statues worth hunting down and collecting. You can put them on a shelf and they will look glorious, they will look in uniform, and above all, they will create a display unlike any other. And so I've always collected things growing up, and naturally Skylanders combines that longing of mine to play video games and have fun being immersed in a world that's so different to my own, giving me that escapism. But then I can also collect these toys at the same time. I can just go out into the wild and see what I can find. And when it comes to Skylanders hunting, or, you know, back in the day when you could Skylanders hunt due to them still being in the store still, it was just such an enriching experience to just go into a store, run to the Skylanders section and be surprised at what he had. Seeing, you know, a Nightlight, a rare character for the first time in a store, it makes you so excited to check out what they have, and it makes you even more excited when you find something rare because it feels so unique to you, that experience that has just enriched you and just made you more invested in finding these figurines. You know, it's one thing buying them, but it's another thing finding them out in the wild, if that makes any sort of sense. So the hunting in and of itself is something I've always loved about Skylanders, and will continue to love, even though it's very hard these days. Like, not only is it hard to find Skylanders actually in stores, but it's made even harder by a certain pandemic, making it difficult to travel. But moving on to the fact that Skylanders gave birth to a whole new genre of all things. Toys to Life is a genre, with it being absolutely milked by companies like Disney, creating Disney Infinity. Then we had, of course, Amiibo, Lego Dimensions, Light Seekers, yeah, that was a thing, if you remember that much, and Starlink too. And ultimately, none of these would have happened, at least not to the same capacity, without Skylanders. I doubt, you know, Nintendo would have shoehorned in an NFC reader in the Wii U gamepad if it wasn't for Skylanders. Lego Dimensions no doubt would have happened at some point because, you know, Lego video games take the physicality of Lego games and implement it into the video games that Lego themselves, in of themselves, are developing. So that was practically inevitable, as Thanos would say. Inevitable. Just pretend there was Infinity Stones right there. But moving on from my nerdiness, Skylanders has influenced the gaming market, and it changed it for the better, because back in the day, I say that as if I'm old, I am, and I've grown up with this franchise. You know, it's amazing to think that now I'm an adult and I still love Skylanders to the same capacity as I did as a child, and I love that as nostalgia because I go back to Spyro's Adventure and I feel though that same surprise, that same investment when I placed the toy in a portal and it appeared on the game in front of me. That magic, I still feel it every time I place these statues on the portal's power. And so that nostalgia gives me further investment, and I couldn't have chosen a greater video game franchise to grow up with over the years. You know, every time a new Skylanders game was released, it gave me something to look forward to year in, year out. And without question, as I said, they brought original characters to the mix every single year. And so really, when it comes to Skylanders, there are very few things for me to nitpick, and that's mainly why I call Imaginator's worst game, because I'm such a huge fan of this franchise and care about it so deeply. When they do anything slightly wrong, I feel like I know better and that I would have took the game in a completely different direction, knowing what we wanted to see out of Skylanders game, because at the end of the day, people have matured with this game, with this franchise even, and a lot of us wanted to see a more mature style taken with later Skylanders games, forgetting that Superchargers in and of itself was pretty dark. We start off with the good guys in chains and Chaos having won, severing the connection between, you know, Earth and Skylands, meaning that from now on we need to use a Rift engine to create a portal. That's just such a unique concept, and that's what makes, you know, Superchargers so great on a crafting level. It's so easy to forget sometimes how difficult a video game is to make. And the Skylanders games just absolutely nail the crafting when it comes to how well these games are made, because you have hundreds of characters, and no matter what, when you place your character, even if it's Sunburn on the portal, they appear in the game, no questions asked, and I love that. But yes, it gave birth to an entire genre, and it helped exposed Skylanders with the fact that it was multi-platform. You could find it on Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo. Skylanders Imaginators, even Superchargers was the game with the widest amount of platforms available, and you can find it on the 3DS, for Wii, for Wii U, for PS3, for PS4, the Xbox 360, the Xbox One, and iOS, and I'm pretty sure it's actually just iOS. I was about to say Android as well, but still, it has eight platforms. Anyone and their grandma can play these games, and that's what made them so marketable. The fact that anyone could pick up a Skylander and play it on any version of the game. You know, we could take my Nightlight that I use on my PS4 version of Trap Team and play it on my Xbox 360. That is some great coding going back to the crafting of the game, and I tell you what, Nintendo, when it comes to the cross-platformality of these games, will be really shooting themselves in the foot, because originally Skylanders was going to be a Nintendo exclusive, available only on the Wii and 3DS as far as Venture, and then of course the Wii U and the Switch once they were introduced to the world, mind you. And of course, Nintendo did clearly go back on this and gave Activision rights to some of their characters for Superchargers, of all things. But yes, I just find it so funny how Nintendo, of all people, really shot themselves in the foot and didn't want the exclusivity rights to Skylanders, which would have really helped Wii U, of all things. But that's the thing, most video games these days are grounded in the RPG or shooter genres, which are very mature genres, and so naturally they appeal to older gamers, you know, for ones who are over 18 who don't mind the blood, violence, and gore in their video games, mind you, and can differentiate the difference between violence in a video game and violence in real life. But Skylanders, it doesn't need blood, guts, and gore to be good, because instead what it can do is it can market itself for kids. It's the perfect thing for kids to get into, especially if they're on Xbox and PlayStation systems that have far fewer games aimed at kids, because Nintendo have plenty of exclusives aimed at kids, but not Xbox and PlayStation even. So again, that's what makes Skylanders so great, the fact that it offers opportunities for kids to play their first games in a form that isn't going to scar them for life, so that then they can invest themselves in video games and slowly but surely work their way up to more mature ones later down the line. Skylanders creates that base, that first interaction with games, and that makes it all the more magical. You think putting a toy on a portal and transferring it into a game is magical? No, what's truly magical is a franchise that can introduce an entire demographic to its industry and keep them constantly immersed for years and years on end. Moving on to the big one, for juicy reasons as to why I love Skylanders, you could say, and that starts with all of you. That's right, the community. I've been somewhat praising this community up until this moment. I've been alluding to the fact about how, you guys all have your own opinions on the games and why you all have a reason as to why you love the games, and that's of course unique to you. And that brings me really to the inclusive nature of the community. No matter our opinions on Skylanders, who we think is the best or the worst, what I've noticed is that we aren't viral about things. We tend to respect each other's opinions, and when we have a favourite Skylander, we tend to be associated with that Skylander. You guys can't look at Ignite without thinking of me, because he's my favourite character, and you could say the same with people like Judas, who loves Tidepool, and Crypt Crusher, who loves Crypt King. And so despite these opinions, and despite the fact that we all have different favourite Skylanders that we are notorious for loving to bits, we are still incredibly inclusive, no matter whether we're big or small. I have 350 subs, and yet I'm known by channels with subs in the 4 digits. It feels such an honour to be known amongst the crowd and to be included amongst it, to, be called a Skytuber is such an unbelievable honour to me, to be classed as a Skytuber amongst dozens upon dozens of amazing content creators. And the community is constantly supporting one another. I ask people for collaborations, and most people get on it in an instant. In fact, like me, they are honoured to even be thought of when it comes to collaborative efforts. So the fact that we are there for one another, we support one another, and would practically do anything for one another, just makes our community as a whole, despite us being from different parts of the planet, having different cultures, it shows our inclusivity and our diversity as a community. It shows that no matter who you are, you can still love Skylanders and still be included, and that is a powerful message to send to anyone who wants to come into community, who is afraid about joining, and they can know that no matter who they are or where they come from, they will be welcome here. That's just something incredibly humbling that I myself cannot just put into words how much I love it. This community, it's diverse, it's ranged, it's inclusive, just everything I've just said all meshed into one to make what is, for the most part, an amazing community. And not many games have those. There are several video games that have toxic communities that don't include smaller the content creators, that don't, care about other people's opinions and just try to push their own and try to scaremonger people into changing their opinion, and in other words, try to make them more like themselves rather than turning them into who they are. But that's not what this community does. This community thrives in allowing people to express who they are, why they love Skylanders, and what it means to them. So never be afraid to be yourself, especially in this community as inclusive and as supportive as it is. You could go on the internet and say practically anything about Skylanders, and this community will be happy to support you, help you grow. And as I said, that is just so truly humbling. I've not even scratched the surface of how incredible this community is, and it's all thanks to the content creator Striker Camo, who found one of my videos a few years back and was the first one who really started to support my channel. He offered me collaborations to try and help my numbers grow. He, offered me positions into the community and recommended me to start my own Instagram account so I could start network and much more. So I owe an awful lot to that guy, and so the fact that our friendship has grown over the years and that I could just so easily call him a friend of mine, because that's what we are. As a community, we come together and we form friendships. So some of these people I know are halfway across the world, and yet I still consider them a friend. If that's not powerful, I don't know what is. But now we really get into the much more serious, personal side of video, because I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys right here. A few years back, during 2014, I wasn't in the best place mentally. I felt like nobody really cared for me, nobody really, liked what I liked. Whenever we had group projects in PE and in science, I would always have to scavenge for a group to find, and that was mostly my own nerves for the most part. I have a lot of mental issues like anxiety, and of course that condition I opened up the video with, and so naturally it didn't help that I wasn't willing to put myself out there. But what I really needed was greater support and greater friends to make me feel more included, and because of this community I've never felt more included. But back in 2014, when I didn't have a community, I wasn't even making videos back then, it just upset me every time I would look at a group of people in science who just wouldn't see me, it felt like. And of course I did have friends, and I had high school crushes, as the usual teenage hormones go, so to say, and I was friends with my crush, so that did help. Moving on from the crushes here. Eventually things got better. Someone joined for school in year 10, which would have been, around 2015, 16 for me. His name was Farah. You've seen him in one of hunting videos before. And my main problem was my confidence, but Farah, he came into my life and helped boost my confidence. He was so humble, so inclusive. He was practically this entire community summarized as one person before I even started making content. And so the fact that I can make these parallels to just such an awfully amazing human being, I could not fault Farah in the slightest. He was so kind, as I said, so humbling. He would never, he was the smartest person in class, and he would never flex about it. He would never go around proclaiming how well he did in exams, He would always ask how you did and congratulate you before he'd even mention about his scores. Oh man, and whenever you did better than him, oh, he was so nice about it. He was never, bitter. Wow, what a man that was. And unfortunately he went to Saudi Arabia, so not having him in my life has been pretty tough as well. I really miss the dude, and that's why I'm so glad I have a community as inclusive as this one. And I'm saying this over and over again just to emphasize it, because that way you guys can remember and actually take something away from this video, because that's the whole aim. I'm kind of rambling on here so that then you guys can maybe learn something about me and hopefully be inspired to speak up and say something for yourselves based on your own experiences, because who knows, maybe Skylanders helped get you through tough times as well. Because before Farah, I had a friend named Josh, and let's just say he wasn't the best of friends. Sure, he hung out with me, but he never really said I was a good friend. He always guilt-tripped me into giving him snacks and stuff, and whenever I got mad or called him out, he would be upset, he would cry over me, he would tell me how much of a terrible human being I am. So naturally I had to do everything to appease him. If I did anything that he didn't like, he would just, try his hardest to stay away from me and break up our relationship, we could say. So yeah, him being what I would have called at the time my only friend was not convenient. Of course, I did have other friends that I didn't think about at the time, and so I did grow out that phase, but Skylanders just helped me through. I could look at my collection around me and I could feel included with them. I could feel pride over having accomplished such an amazing collection. Every time I look at these Skylanders, it feels like an accomplishment having owned them, because there are thousands of these figures around the world, and yet this one is mine. This is the one that, well, I didn't find this one. I found Type Wool in a store, but as for Nightlight, it was given to me by a friend, but it's still, my Nightlight is unique to me. And because of that, there's a connection there, a pride, which that feeling alone is something that is so overwhelmingly positive that no matter how bad things get in life, no matter how dark things seem, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and there's always more positives to focus on. And even if there is less positives, just remember that the positives outshadow negatives because of the power and influence they have. Just emotionally invest yourself in what you love in life, your passions. You don't necessarily need human interaction, like it's necessary for sure, and you should be sociable. But sometimes if you just need to take a step back, find your own space, and just admire something like the Skylanders that surround you, then that's what they're there for, in a way. So that's a much more personal, serious note as to why I love Skylanders so much. It just helped me get through a slightly tougher time in my life. I wasn't exactly depressed, let's not take this too far. But it wasn't the happiest time for me, let's just put it like that. And so after having gone downhill so much, I pushed through it, and I found for positives around me, and my main positive at the time was Skylanders, and looking forward to the next game, hyping up Trap Team, baby, whoop whoop. Because remember when Trap Team was announced, the idea of bringing life to a toy, because of course you have an inanimate trap, and then you can place it in the portal, and all of a sudden a villain is trapped inside it, and it speaks to you, you feel included, you can interact with that character in a way. It was just such an awesome, cool mechanic that I could not wait to try out, so that definitely helped me get through the year, my hype and anticipation for that, you could say. But yeah, as I previously stated, I could not have chose a better franchise to grow up with. I love Skylanders, I have no shame in saying that. I will say that until the day I die. And if a video that's almost 40 minutes long at this point doesn't prove my love for Skylanders, I don't know what will. And there's no better way to debut Skytubers than with a passion-filled rant about what makes Skylanders so special to me. And of course, the main thing that makes Skylanders so awesome is this guy right here. Without Igniter, this franchise would suck. But this guy here, he elevates the entire franchise from being just such an awesome figurine with great detail, amazing posing that just demonstrates such great character. He has a personality of a knight, which makes him very full to the brim with heroism and valor and all. It's just personality traits that I have a soft spot for, and Igniter, brings that all together. He also has power in combat and a variety of moves as well that you can use strategically to trap enemies in a wall of fire. He's so cool, and he is well deservingly my favourite Skylander, and one of the main reasons why I love this franchise so much, because I can love this Skylander to death. He can be my favourite Skylander, and as I said earlier, you guys will respect my opinion for that, and I will respect yours if you don't like him, but in that case your opinion is wrong, and that's how opinions work.